The entire 16-strong executive of the Wakefield Constituency Labour Party has resigned over an alleged stitch-up. A by-election is due in the constituency, but the favoured candidate of Labour members to win back the seat hasn't made it to the shortlist. A source within the local party told us today the executive has resigned because they needed to take some direct action over the process of the parliamentary selection. If they hadn't resigned, I think it would look like they were condoning the process and what's happened. And they don't condone it. It's been unfair and undemocratic. So what happened? Well, Wakefield is facing a by-election because their Tory MP, Imran Ahmad Khan, was found guilty of molesting a child. The seat is a crucial one for Labour. The party held it for 87 years until the 2019 election when it fell to the Tories. Now Labour has a chance to take it back, and it will be a major test of Keir Starmer's ability to win back the so-called Red Wall. But winning the seat doesn't appear to be the only interest of Labour Party bigwigs. They also appear to want to control exactly who stands. And it seems they've been willing to break the rules to do so. According to sources in the CLP, the shortlisting panel included only one member of the local party. That's in contravention of this rule passed at Labour's 2021 party conference. So the rule reads, it was passed, selection committees for by-elections should have 3 reps from the local party appointed by the local executive committee, 1 representative from the regional executive committee appointed by the chair and vice chairs of the REC, and 1 NEC member. So local members were supposed to get 3 of the 5 seats, and they only got 1. And lo and behold, this meant the preferences of local members were ignored. Hence, the executive have resigned. The 2 candidates who made it to the final shortlist are Kate Dearden, a former chair of Labour Students who works for the Community Trade Union, and Simon Lightwood, who is an NHS worker and former staffer for Wakefield's previous MP, Mary Creagh. Creagh herself was already controversial in the constituency. Our source in the CLP said, Mary, our previous MP, lost a lot of support from residents because of her stance on fighting for a second referendum and her involvement in the people's vote. The majority of residents want someone who represents their views. I don't think necessarily an MP needs to share the views, but they do need to represent the people that elected them. As we saw with Mary being voted out of Wakefield and losing a Labour MP for the first time in 90 years, that wasn't popular amongst voters. Wakefield voted 66% for leave during the Brexit referendum, and this was Mary Creagh, while she was representing them, campaigning for a people's vote. Creagh was parachuted in from Islington in 2005 and lost the seat in 2019. But Labour bigwigs appeared to have learnt very little. As I've already said, one of the 2 candidates shortlisted is a former staffer of Creagh, and the other clearly shares her politics. In a since-deleted tweet, this is Kate Dearden campaigning in Parliament Square in early 2019. You can see, campaigning for a people's vote there. And according to local sources, these 2 candidates were imposed despite there being 3 other options backed by the CLP. That included the deputy leader of the council, so clearly a plausible candidate. Before I go to Aaron, I'm going to go to Keir Starmer for his view. He tweeted, the selections for Labour candidates need to be more democratic, and we should end NEC impositions of candidates. Local members should select their candidates for every election. Of course, that was Keir Starmer in 2020. It's ancient history, and we couldn't possibly hold Starmer to commitments he made such a long time ago.
Only people in Westminster, only British politicians would think that Keir Starmer is a man of integrity. What hasn't this guy lied about? I mean, they're making fools of themselves, right? These people tweet, Keir Starmer, Mr. Integrity. He's literally gone back on absolutely everything he says. How stupid do you look? But because 20 of my colleagues said it, I'll say it too. They're lemmings, which, by the way, is the exact same logic we saw in regards to the second referendum stuff. As you've said, Michael, there was a change at conference last year which said that when you don't have sufficient time, as with a by-election, you need to have 3 members of the local CLP determined by the executive to sit on a shortlisting panel. And rather than 3, there were 1. And according to that rule change, there should be 1 member of the NEC, which of course Starmer controls, but that was inverted, so there were 3. So Keir Starmer didn't just defy what was decided at conference last year, he has directly contravened the very words that were tweeted in 2020. So he's not just out by a little bit. He's not just kind of smoothed things over. He's done the complete opposite of what he said. He has absolutely undermined local activists to enhance the influence of the National Executive Committee. Now, they've shortlisted 2 people, both Remainers. And neither of them are from the constituency. And as you've said, one of them previously worked for Mary Cray, I believe is from the Northeast, and Kate didn't. She's from Bradford, so that's good. She's from Yorkshire. What I'm told, the Labour sort of leadership don't see the Brexit issue as a problem because, look, that seems to have been neutralised in the local elections. Of course, it was still a major issue last year. They got thumped in Hartlepool partly because they ran a Remainer in a very Leave seat. And they think that's now been neutralised as an issue because you get Lib Dems winning in Sunderland or whatever. In a set of national elections, i.e. local elections, which we just had, I think that's probably true. I don't think Brexit's going to play as a major issue at local elections anytime soon. However, in a by-election, in a seat which 66% voted to leave, I think running one of two Remainers is a big mistake. And I think having them determined by a leadership in London is also a big mistake. This is something that the Labour right don't get. This is part of now the national zeitgeist. People don't want to be told what to do. That's what Brexit was all about. And it's very hard for the London big house pundits to get their heads around. They think, wow, 2,000-3,000 of us in the TV studios of central London and Westminster, we don't get to decide? No, you don't, not anymore. That's just how politics has kind of turned out in the last 10, 15 years, whether it's Brexit, Corbyn, Scottish independence. People from the bottom up now have more power than they used to. Partly an outgrowth of changed political kind of opportunities with the consensus of the 1990s collapsing, partly technology. However you want to explain it, it's definitely here. And one of the people who should have been shortlisted, who wasn't, one of the councillors, he posted an interesting post on Facebook. I tweeted about it earlier today. And you can see the comments, hundreds of comments from local residents, not Labour Party members, saying they still don't get it. We want someone from here who we decide to represent us. We don't want a coterie of people in London deciding who gets to represent Wakefield because it helps Keir Starmer with his internal party management, right? We don't want a little yes man working for the leader of the Labour Party. We want a parliamentarian looking out for our best interests. Now, a great example of where this worked was Kim Ledbetter. The process to select her, by the way, in Batley-on-Spen was terrible, which is something that's been remarked upon by many activists in Wakefield that I've spoken to. They said the process was terrible, but they got a good candidate because she was local. And they said, we never would have won that if we didn't have a local candidate, because you knock on the doors, they say, oh yeah, I know Kim. My kids used to play with her, or I used to see her at the local school, or I knew her sister, or I knew this relative of hers. So that deep organising, as it's called, which by the way has been dismissed and derided by Keir Starmer. He, after all, broke down the community organising unit, which had been created by his predecessor, Jeremy Corbyn. That deep organising is fundamental if Labour want to not just form the next government, but keep hold of seats like this. And they don't just not get that, Michael. They still think it's a joke. They still think it's a joke. And the very genre of politics which Keir Starmer embodies is about London, policy wonks, transfixed with the media, going to the summer parties of The Spectator and The Guardian, and thinking basically, we still call the shots from within the M25. Politics no longer works like that. And I think Labour under Keir Starmer are going to find that out the hard way.
Obviously, this is just one of many stories of Labour stitch-ups. The stories when it comes to like council selections, the people who have been dismissed, people who have been found ineligible to stand for councils. So many incredibly well-qualified people who've been suspended for the most ludicrous of reasons. People always say in their leadership elections, I want everything to be very democratic. And then, especially if you're Keir Starmer, you come to power, suddenly all I'm interested in is making sure anyone with a remotely different ideology to me or a remotely different ideology to my staff, which I think is very important in this case, has no chance whatsoever of advancement in this party.